The Oklahoma sun hung heavy on the horizon as I drove down familiar dirt roads. The orange hue peeked behind the naked trees all around me. I slowed down to try and see if any of the tall oaks had given up their acorns yet. Unable to spot any, I pulled the wheel of my truck hard to the left and turned down Low Water Road. Just as I straightened the wheel back up, my phone rang. "What's cooking, good looking?" I answered the call with a smile.
"Chicken fried steak and taters."
My wife's voice greeted me.
"Where are you going? You drove on past the house."
"I'm gonna get down here and pull the cards on those game cameras. I'm telling you, I think someone from that hunting club up around the city has been fiddling around down there. I hit a couple up in the trees. Gonna see if I can catch them. I'm sure they're after Brutus."
"Clay, you haven't seen that buck in going on 2 years. I told you as soon as you name one, they up and wander off to different pastures. But don't take too long. Supper is almost ready."
"Oh, he's still around. I feel it in my bones." We both laughed. "Let me holler at Bubba while I got you on the phone." I heard the shuffle of clothing as she put the cell phone to her belly. "Hey there, little man. I'll be back at the house real soon. You take care of your mama until I get there, okay? And save some of those taters for me."
"I don't know why he only kicks when he hears you."
My wife brought the phone back up to her ear.
"Seriously though, get your rat killing done and come home. And be careful. Those fellas from the city don't even look before they shoot half the time. They're way too trigger happy."
"Sarah, you worry too much. I'll be fine. I'll put my orange on and everything." My brakes squealed slightly as I pulled up to our gate. "I'm here now. I'll be in and out, I promise."
"Okay, sweetie. I love you."
"Love you too." I hung up the phone and stepped out of the truck. I inhaled deeply, pulling the crisp fall air into my lungs. I looked back across the field to my house in the distance and just stood there for a few moments, appreciating all that I had in life. Sarah and I had started from nothing and put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into this acreage. I was one lucky son of a gun to have found such a good woman to call my wife and, soon to be, mother of my children. I reached over and checked the flowers I had picked up for her to make sure they weren't damaged during the drive. Sarah's smile was precious to me, and I'm sure even messed up flowers would get me one, but she deserved perfection. I folded the front seat of the truck forward and grabbed my orange vest and cap. I put both on and then checked my 9mm. The magazine was full, so I returned it to the holster at my hip. I tossed the keys to the truck under the floor mat and then hopped over the gate. The leaves and twigs gave a satisfying crunch as I landed on them. I began to walk towards my tree stand. I took in the power of the towering oak trees. The long shadows cast by the forest around me were a reminder that dusk wasn't far off. Not long after I left the gate, the scent of freshly turned earth flooded my nostrils. I followed the smell and found several new wallows dug into the ground. "Damn hogs," I said out loud as I threw my hat to the ground. "Can't have nothing around here." I made a mental note to give my father-in-law a call later. He had been successful in setting up hog traps around his place. I thought they hadn't made it up this far past the river. I carried on grumbling and brainstorming about how to deal with the trespassers, and soon found myself on the edge of my food plot. I stepped out into the clearing afraid of what I might find, but breathed a sigh of relief when I found it full and intact. I bent down and gently caressed the clover and turnip leaves. "We're safe for now, it looks like," I told the plants. "They haven't found you yet anyways. We're gonna have to get those hogs out of here quick though, if you have any chance of becoming a nice meal for Brutus." I stood up and walked around the edge of the food plot, checking for acorns as I went. "I told Sarah it wasn't too early," I said as I reached down and picked up several. "She owes me an ice cream now." Once the acorns fall, the deer won't be far behind. I thought of dinner last week when Sarah cooked the last of our venison. We had lots of room in the freezer. I would have to make sure it was full before the season ended. A gentle wind blew, and I caught the flutter of an orange flag from the corner of my eye. The flag sat at the base of my tree stand and served as a marker in the early morning hours when darkness swallowed everything out here. I walked towards the flag and realized only a sliver of daylight remained in the sky. I approached the tree stand and pulled out my flashlight to scan for the adjacent tree I had strapped the camera to. The tree stood alone in front of the stand, and was covered in a deep layer of moss. I had hidden the camera in the fork of the branches, hoping that no one would see it. I was stretched out on my tiptoes, reaching for the prize, when I heard the whine of metal grinding on metal behind me. I whipped around so fast that I dropped the flashlight. I instinctively touched the gun at my side as I scanned the area around me. I kept my eyes forward, looking for the source of the noise as I reached down and picked up my light. A heavy wind shot across the ground, and I was caught in a storm of orange and yellow leaves. I heard the grinding noise again and realized it was the tree stand succumbing to the autumn gust. My light illuminated the base of the ladder, and I slowly let it travel up the length of the structure. When it reached the top, my stomach turned over. Looking down on me from high above was the figure of a man dressed in camouflage. It was as if he wore the darkness around him like a cloak, and I couldn't get a good look at him, even with my light.
"Who are you?"
I barked.
"This is private property, you know."
The figure turned its head towards me with a slight nod, but did not speak.
"You with Jeff and them other boys from the hunting club? I done had to run you all off once from out here, and I'll damn sure do it again."
The man turned away from me and looked straight ahead. A shiver crawled down my spine, and I felt the pores of my arms rise up with chicken skin. I had never been one to shy away from conflict, but the posture of the man left me feeling worse than uneasy. He continued to stare straight ahead with his hands on his lap, as if he was a statue.
"Look, fella, just climb on down out of there. We don't want to have to call the game warden, the county laws, or nothing. Just give me your word you won't come back."
The figure rose, and for a moment, I thought the whole interaction might end amicably. As the creature reached its full height, I found myself struck with terror. The terror I felt cut deep into the part of my brain that separated reality from nightmares, and I wasn't sure which plane I existed in any longer. I was pinned to the spot in which I stood. The thing seemed to shake off the cloak of darkness, and in the yellow haze of my flashlight, I saw that its legs were jointed in reverse, and its feet faced away from the rest of its body. The monster stood there in a stance I can only describe as an affront to nature, and I felt a piercing gaze upon me, though it had no discernible face. I dropped the flashlight and then raised the pistol I carried at my side. I drew a bead on the creature, but I found myself unable to pull the trigger. It began to descend the ladder, still staring at me. The unnatural way in which it moved made my stomach turn, and I had to fight the warm bile crawling up my throat. The jerkiness of each step, coupled with the formidable balance required to walk down such a steep ladder, made it seem as if the thing was controlled by an unseen puppeteer. The monster hopped down from the last few steps and made a move towards me. I felt myself spiral as I fell deeper into the abyss of shock and confusion. With each disjointed step, the creature seemed to get more familiar. The camouflage it wore was mine. I had thrown it out years ago. The beard resting on its chin was the same deep brown one as the one I had carried for years. I watched as the skin where a face should be contorted and twisted until I was looking at my own reflection. It was me, but some of the features were off. The eyebrows were just a little too thick, and I noticed that the nose was set a little lower. The being had copied what I, a human, should be, but it didn't quite get it right. I regained a bit of confidence as I realized the thing was only a few feet in front of me, and my gun was pointed directly at its head.
"What the hell are you?"
I asked. The copy of me opened a mouth with too many teeth. Though its lips didn't move, it replied in my own voice.
"Sarah, open the door. I have something to show you."
Without hesitation, I squeezed the trigger over and over. I dumped the entire magazine into the thing's head. Each bullet entered and left a gaping hole where there was once flesh. It did not bleed. It did not move. With each shot, the monster's smile only got wider. The thing's skin began to crawl like spiders, and I watched in horror as bits of flesh scurried off to cover all the empty space left by my attempts to wound it. I gripped my pistol tightly and swung it at the specter of myself.
"I won't let you hurt them!"
I yelled as I struck the thing on the nose. It only laughed in response. I beat on the creature until the fall air was fire inside my lungs. I could barely stand as I struggled to get enough air to keep my body going.
"Why are you doing this?"
I asked, in between breaths. The monster suddenly stiffened. A darkness seemed to roll in like a mist, and I found myself seeking the comfort of my flashlight, which lay just a few feet away. A voice that sounded as if it had crawled straight from the depths of hell boomed out of the creature.
Innocence is a currency with more value than you could ever know.
The mysterious being grabbed me by the shoulders and pulled me in close.
I can never get these legs right, so we'll just have to do it this way. Don't worry, I'll let you say goodbye.
A purple light shot from within the creature's mouth. I felt the breath leaving my body as the light engulfed me. Within moments, everything was dark, and then I remembered nothing. I awoke sometime later with a pounding in my head. I struggled to get to my feet, but no matter how hard I tried, I could only crawl. I looked up to the sky. The moon was high. It had to be well after midnight. I continued along on all fours, trying to get my bearings. I needed to make sure Sarah and our little boy were safe. I waded through the tall pasture grass until I recognized the barn on the horizon and took my crawl to a gallop. I wasn't far from my home. I didn't know how I was going to explain this whole thing to Sarah. Had I fallen and hit my head? Did I dream it all? I thought of Sarah and the look she was going to give me. I could hear her now.
Clay, I know you're pulling my leg. I'm sure you just fell out of that tree stand and don't want me worrying. You don't have to spin a yarn like that.
I smiled. It made sense to me. I reached our fence, and with a lot of effort, I was able to worm my way in between the strands of barbed wire. I tried to call out, but my voice wouldn't work. I crawled my way to the front of the house and was shocked to see my truck sitting in the driveway, next to Sarah's car. I turned and could see Sarah through the window. Even in the sorry state I was in, I couldn't help but take a couple of moments to admire her beauty. I was staring into her deep blue eyes when I began to shake with rage. Her porcelain skin was marred with a black eye. Righteous anger welled up from deep within me. I crawled as fast as I could to the front door. I couldn't reach the handle, so I began to bang my head on the glass and throw my shoulder into the side of the house.
What's all that racket?
My own voice came from within as the door swung open. I was stunned to see myself staring back at me.
Oh, it's you. I was wondering when you might show up.
The creature leaned down close to me and whispered,
You know, you got yourself a pretty nice setup here. I can't wait to get into bed tonight with that Sarah. I'll keep her cozy until that boy of yours is born.
I lunged at him, but he was easily able to duck out of the way. I tried to scream, but the only noise that escaped my mouth was a squeal.
Can't quite work that body yet, huh? I mean, it makes sense. Have you figured it out yet?
He produced a mirror from his pocket and shoved it into my face.
Here, have a look.
I was appalled as the face staring back at me was not my own, but that of a pig. The creature snatched the mirror away from me and stood up.
Sarah, get out here and bring me my rifle.
He winked at me.
I told you I was gonna let you say goodbye.
Sarah rushed to the doorway, trembling. Her strong demeanor was replaced with that of a pup who had been scolded one too many times. She wouldn't look my copycat in the eyes, but reached out towards him to hand him the rifle.
What's going on, Clay? Is everything all right? I told you there was hogs down in that holler.
He pushed the rifle back into her hands.
And you were gonna do the honors of dispatching this one here.
My heart began to race. I tried with every fiber of my being to call out to the woman that I loved, but I was still only able to produce a couple of squeals. Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes.
Clay, you know I ain't never killed nothing in my whole life. I can't do that. Woman, you will do exactly as you're told.
I bit at the legs of the man controlling my body, and he kicked me hard in the chest.
Now hurry up, damn it! What is going on with you tonight?
Sarah asked between sobs.
You haven't ever treated me this way. Please, don't make me do it. All right, we can do it the hard way if that's what you want.
The creature began unbuckling its belt buckle and produced a long strip of leather.
I have no problem whipping you again.
I charged at the man and knocked him down. I ripped and tore at my own body with the tusks now stuck to my face. I watched as the skin I once called my own easily succumbed to the small blades. I yelled and cursed at the monster that dared to lay a hand upon my bride, but I knew all that escaped my mouth were the violent squeals of an animal. He tried to crawl away, but I bore down on him over and over, stomping and gnashing every part of him that I could. I stopped suddenly when I heard a boom from behind me, and the pungent odor of gunpowder filled my nostrils. I fell to the side and felt blood leaking from my body. Sarah ran over to our assailant and bent down to comfort him.
Clay, honey, are you all right? I'm sorry, baby. I should have shot that pig when you told me to.
She reached down and leaned him upright against the bricks of our home. Once her back was to him, he shot a smile at me that wounded me deeper than a gun ever could. Sarah then picked up the rifle and pointed it at me. I could see the pain in her face as she racked another round into the chamber.
Clay, he's got little tears in his eyes. That poor thing.
Sarah pulled the trigger. A lifetime of memories flooded my mind. Our first date, closing on our home, the wedding, and the day we found out she was pregnant. I fought for a few more breaths with the light of my life, hoping that I would wake up from this nightmare. I watched as Sarah slid down and sat next to the monster that had stolen everything from me. He began to rub her belly, and then everything went black. Thanks for listening. If you enjoy these stories, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and check out some more of my episodes here.